Hi, so today I want to talk to you about the DJI Air 2S and my experience with it. I just got back from Iceland and I started posting photos from there, and they were all from the drone. So I started getting asked about what I used, how it compared to others, so I figured why not make a video. So this is going to be a pretty short and concise review, nothing technical, it's just my experience using it. And I wanted to show you a little reel of footage that I got, that'll be at the end. So let's get into it. Now my only point of comparison is the original Mavic Pro. I had that one for about 1.5 years, but I lost it due to a combination of a battery issue and the winds and the cold. So yeah. Before getting this one, my main options were the Mavic 2 Pro, Mavic Air 2S, and the Mini 2. However, after comparing them, I felt like this was a great balance between the two. The Mavic 2 has a few extra features that I like, however, it's considerably bigger. And the Mini 2, while the size is really attractive, I wasn't sure about the sensor size and how it would do with winds. Now, I've only had this drone for about 2-3 weeks, but in the last 10 days that I've used it in Iceland, I've put it through its paces, through high wind, rain, sun, cold, anything you can think of. So it's given me a pretty good grasp on what this drone can and cannot do. So let's get into the positives. First off is the size. This is definitely smaller than my last drone and it's perfect for travel. As someone who does that for a living, I'm always thinking of how is all my gear gonna fit in my backpack? How is it gonna feel when I'm hiking for days on end? So something I definitely value. Now this one being smaller than the Mavic 2 Pro, I was a little concerned about how it would do with the winds. There were a few situations this past week where I was a little afraid to fly it, but you never know when you're gonna go back, so I decided to take a risk, and to my surprise, it did amazingly. I didn't get any warnings until I was pretty high up. If I let go of the remote, it would drag a little bit, but I was always in control and it made me feel pretty confident in flying it. Now, probably the biggest difference in comparison to my last drone is the sensor size. This one has a 1-inch sensor, which is considerably bigger than the last one, and it's also 20 megapixels in comparison to 12. That means that I can crop in and see more detail in the images. The sensor size has a bigger resolving power, so you're just getting better quality. And as a photographer, I think that's something very important. When I'm creating prints out of these drone pictures, I know that I'm getting something better here. When it comes to video, even though I didn't shoot that much video with my last drone, I did get to shoot some and I saw that footage. And in comparison, there's no debate. The footage on this one is fantastic. And a third pro that I hadn't really thought about and that I didn't think of until I started using the drone was how responsive it is when handling. Just the way it moved from side to side, up and down, it was just very reactive, and it made you feel like you could get set up for a shot really quickly, and that was awesome and something that was just a happy surprise. Now this drone definitely has some negatives and I want to mention those too. My favorite feature of the Mavic Pro, the original one, was the fact that you could flip the camera vertically. As someone who posts on Instagram really often, that is something that I do. And now that Instagram Reels and TikTok have become the thing, vertical video is here to stay. So unfortunately, that's something that you don't get with any of the current lineup of drones. What I have to do for video is just shoot my horizontal shots and then crop in a 16:9 in the middle. So usually that means I'm shooting in 4K, and for photos, that means stitching panoramas. So for video, if you're shooting 4K and then uploading 1080p videos, that's not a problem because you have that wiggle room in resolution. And for photos, it's not the end of the world, but sometimes the panoramas don't stitch properly or there's a lot of warping, so you only use a small section of that stitch. So what I do is sometimes I'll just shoot a horizontal with the crop in mind as a backup if for some reason the panoramas are not coming out the way I want. Another thing is the crop that it has when shooting in 60 frames per second. Both in 4K and 1080, this happens. I'm gonna show a video here of how much it zooms in. So it's considerable. It's enough for you to have to reframe the shot, and sometimes you don't have the ability to fly back, so it can be a little limiting and something to think about. Another thing that I was pretty excited to use on this drone was the active track to create some cinematic videos, but to my surprise, that only works on 30 frames per second as well. So if you want to create some slow-mo out of those videos, you're very limited in how much you can do so. The only alternative is to just improve your drone skills and create those clips yourself. And last but not least, the remote. I think it's kind of big for what it is. I do like that you can put the phone up top when you're flying. In comparison to the older mode where it was below, I do find it more intuitive to have it above the controls. However, I don't know if it needed to be this big. It looks like there's a lot of wasted space. So for that reason, I do miss the smaller footprint of the last remote. All in all, I'm really stoked on this drone. I feel like for someone like me, it's a great compromise between the Mavic 2 Pro and the Mini 2. It performs really well in wind. The quality of the photos and video are great. So even though it has those limitations, I feel like it's still the best option for me. So that about sums it up. I'm gonna leave you with that footage now. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer them, and I'll see you on the next one.